There's been a lot of talk lately about champions wanting to push up for double champ status. We've got Islam Makhachev to Leon Edwards after Leon's performance at UFC 296 against Colby Covington. We've also got Sean O'Malley to Ilia Topuria after his UFC 299 win. And recently at UFC 300, we have Alex Pereira hinting at a move up to heavyweight. In the current landscape, this is how I think every champ versus champ fight plays out. For the first double champ fight, we have strawweight champion Zhang Weili against flyweight women's champion Alexa Grasso. To be honest, I thought we would get this fight at UFC 300, which I would have been super keen for, but if they keep winning, we'll get it eventually, as we've never had a double champ fight in across these two divisions. Now, moving into the fight itself, firstly, we know Weili is very well-rounded, but she struggles with her distance management. This is what was very evident in the fight against Yan Xiaonan that just recently happened at UFC 300. But when it comes to Weili's best chances, I think her best chance is to utilize her top control. She showed it very well in that Yan Xiaonan fight, which ultimately won her the fight by decision. Weili has fought up at flyweight between 2013 to 2017. It was on the regional scene, however, it wasn't against quality opposition back then. So it's hard to judge that move up or even compare it to anything really. Looking at Grasso, she definitely has the reach, the power, and the boxing advantages, and is also undefeated at flyweight. Since moving up to strawweight in 2019, she's just remained undefeated. It's probably the best decision she's ever made in her career. I just don't see her getting finished in the striking department against Weili. Weili struggled with her distance against Yan, and Grasso has a 3-inch reach advantage over Yan. That just puts it into perspective against, and Alexa Grasso is a boxing-oriented fighter, so she knows how to manage her distance. So I think Weili on the feet will definitely struggle in this matchup. Grasso also utilizes her 1-2 very well. Her straight strikes, which allow her to utilize her range. She's also very strong in the clinch, and she has very decent reversals, which could combat Weili's best chance of taking the fight, being on the ground. But honestly, if the fight was at strawweight, not flyweight, I would go with Weili. Every fight Grasso has lost is at strawweight. We've seen that she definitely struggled a bit against Carla Esparza. Carla controlled her pretty much most of that fight. Going past that Carla fight, and from that point, Alexa Grasso moving up to flyweight, it was clearly the best decision she's ever made in her career. Ultimately, though, if Grasso keeps it standing, I can see her outpointing Weili to a decision. I also think Grasso is capable of keeping herself safe against Weili's submission threats. I just think she will struggle with the wrestling transitions of Weili, but ultimately, I think Grasso can get it done. Next double champ fight, Alexa Grasso versus bantamweight champion Raquel Pennington. I think this is an easier matchup to predict than the last fight. Firstly, I think the weight translation wouldn't be an issue for Grasso. It gives her more strength in the clinch situations, which I think would probably be Raquel's best option. But I mean, if Grasso is getting more strength and she's already good in the clinch, it's already not looking good. Grasso is much more efficient and accurate on the feet. I think Alexa would be able to outpoint Raquel on the feet overall. I also just think strawweight and flyweight just have better caliber fighters than bantamweight do. I mean, Dana's already stated that it's basically an end to the women's featherweight division. Honestly, I just think it seems that the heavier the divisions go for the women's divisions, the less skilled the fighters seem to be in this day and age. Also, going back to Raquel, I just don't think she's mobile enough to avoid the punishment from Grasso, especially with Grasso, as I said before, being so boxing oriented. Raquel has like a brawler style, and I just don't think her brawler style matches up well against Grasso, who is just so much better as a technical fighter. But I think Raquel is durable enough to reach a decision, and Raquel also has a better strike defense and technically a better strike accuracy. But I think the difference is in the technical striking for Grasso. I think that is just the killer of the fight result. Also, looking at it from an age perspective, Raquel is towards the latter end of her career as well. I mean, she's taken a fair bit of damage over the time that she's been in MMA, in the UFC. Ultimately, I think the fight ends by a clear 50-45 decision there. Moving on to the men's divisions, flyweight champion Alexandre Pantoja versus Sean O'Malley. Looking at Pantoja, he's almost cleaned out his whole entire division. I think we could definitely most likely get this fight at some point. Definitely in the near future. I just think if he shuts down Steve Erceg, gets through Amir Albazi and stops Makhachev, I mean, there's just no argument there for him for double champ status. Pantoja, I mean, he has a very skilled ground game. However, he doesn't have a versatile stand-up game. He has a nice 1-2, but not a whole lot to set up the takedown with entering and taking risks, as O'Malley has very good counter-striking on the back foot, and I think it's definitely a way that Pantoja can get caught. I think Pantoja gets aggressive, I mean, just in the fight in general. I mean, he has a strike absorption rate of 3.9. He tends to take a bit of punishment to get into his more advantageous positions, and I think that could definitely be an issue for bantamweight power, especially for someone that is as accurate as Sean O'Malley. However, though, if he can get O'Malley down, it's his best chance of winning, obviously. He's shown great ground control against ragey opponents like Brandon Royval with over 15 minutes of control time and Brandon Moreno with about 8.5 minutes of control time. That's allowed him to grind out both title fight wins. However, O'Malley is so much more lengthy and rangy than them, which utilizes very well and has better footwork than Pantoja in general too. Not to mention he has an insane striking output and a striking accuracy of 62%, which is the 5th highest in the whole of the UFC. I do honestly see this fight going very similarly to the Cheeto fight, just switching Cheeto's power for a stronger ground game, and just like Cheeto, if Pantoja doesn't shoot, I think he loses, and possibly by a late TKO. I think Pantoja is crafty enough to engage in clinches without getting finished. I think he'll sustain damage, enough damage where O'Malley will pull through the unanimous decision win. There's also actually been comments made by O'Malley stating that he dropped Pantoja in sparring, which in all honesty, based off the analysis, I would more so believe that to be true. Moving up, Sean O'Malley versus featherweight champion Ilia Topuria. Firstly, O'Malley has to use his range with the 3-inch reach advantage. He needs to be using straight strikes, and I don't think he can be too fancy in his combinations like he usually is. I honestly think he just has to be on point the whole entire fight with no lapse in judgment, as he has threats coming from not only KO power, but the wrestling efficiency and the jiu-jitsu game of Topuria. However, Ilia does leave himself open during his striking sequences, especially when he's swinging his hooks. I think O'Malley can find success against this with his straight strikes due to his speed. Also, Ilia has a lower base and could potentially leave himself open for a knee or a head kick like Jai Herbert landed on him. But I think stylistically, it's a bit of a stretch, as O'Malley isn't known for his head kicks and he's just a more boxing-oriented fighter. Looking at Ilia, very well-rounded, has a good wrestling and jiu-jitsu base, which, I mean, he used to bulldoze Bryce Mitchell. Ilia also has good boxing, but more so over the boxing, he just has devastating KO power, which we've seen in his last fight against Volkanovski. And he's shown great recovery in his fight against Jai Herbert against that head kick too. Ilia has many options, including his best weapon being his ability to cover distance and then cage pressure to then maximize his KO power, like he did against Damon Jackson and, as I said before, against Alexander Volkanovski. I think Ilia catches O'Malley against the cage after finding early success with some body shots, and I think O'Malley's body is Ilia's strongest target. I think he drops him and then follows him to the ground and submits him via an arm triangle. Moving up, we have Ilia Topuria against lightweight champion Islam Makhachev. As previously said, Ilia is very well-rounded, has great KO power, and I think that would definitely translate effectively into the lightweight division. I think he also has the pure boxing advantage over Islam as well, but he isn't as versatile with his weapons on the feet like Islam is. Ilia also has a 93% takedown defense. However, he hasn't fought close to the caliber of fighter that Islam is when it comes to the ground game. When it comes to Islam, I think this is a fight where the weight could be a considerable factor. I mean, as in recent years, Islam has literally struggled to make lightweight, meaning he's just naturally a lot bigger than Ilia. Islam's also so advanced on the ground with his aggressive transitions into submissions. I don't think Ilia would necessarily be outclassed, but I think Islam's weight and the strength advantage would allow him to win ground positions in a scramble over Ilia. And I don't think takedown defense or absorption rate will play a considerable factor in determining the fight, due to neither fighter having to fight someone who is as talented on the ground as they both are, or that have been able to consistently dominate them on the feet. I mean, like, for Islam, obviously Arman and Charles are good, but I mean, Charles is more of a submission-based threat, not really a wrestling threat. And I mean, Arman was just extremely young when they fought. I think one of the most crucial points for Islam is his kickboxing striking style with the use of clinched knees. Just like the O'Malley analysis, Ilia keeps a low base and he's on the shorter side. So he leaves himself open for head kicks and counters to his hooks, which Islam capitalizes on extremely well. I mean, ultimately, both are very well rounded. However, Islam's in his prime right now. He has a sheer weight advantage, and I think Ilia is clearly prone to Islam's striking style. As a result, Islam lands a flush knee to the chin, drops him, and ground and pounds him. TKO, round 3. Moving up, Islam Makhachev versus welterweight champion Leon Edwards. Honestly, this is definitely the hardest fight for me to pick. Firstly, Islam cuts so much weight. He is almost more so a natural welterweight than he is a lightweight. So I believe his weight translation would be fine. I mean, DC even interviewed Islam before the second Volk fight and said that he walks around at around 200 pounds. I think Islam has a more advanced and aggressive ground game than Leon. However, I believe Leon will be a tougher matchup than Ilia, with the size and kickboxing caliber especially. I think a con that was slightly exposed for Islam in the first Volkanovski fight is there could be a stamina issue for Islam going into the championship rounds. When it comes to Leon specifically though, he has a 3.5-inch reach advantage over Islam, and he's an extremely technical kickboxer. He does have a bit of a suspect chin though. However, I do believe he can defend himself against Islam's striking. And I mean, he doesn't have a history of taking significant damage as he is a point fighter and he utilizes his range very well. It'll be interesting on the feet as they both have a low strike absorption rate. Leon absorbs about 2.34 strikes landed per minute as a striker, which is impressive, and Islam at about 1.27 per minute, which I mean, is understandable. I mean, heavy sambo-based wrestler. I mean, he gets it to the ground most of the time, so he's not absorbing those strikes. Leon has also never been finished in his career. Obviously, Nate Diaz came close. However, I honestly believe Leon played into Nate's game a bit too much in that fight, and I think he just got careless in that 5th round. I think Islam's best grappling sequence is shooting a double leg off an opponent's strike, like he did against Dan Hooker, and then wrapping them up against the cage and working for a submission, like signature Khabib style, pretty much how Khabib found so much of his success. However, Leon has great wrist control and get-ups along the cage when he gets taken down, which definitely makes the choice difficult. I mean, he showed that very well against Kamaru Usman in the second fight. However, I believe Islam's attacking arsenal on the ground will be too much for Leon. And if he couldn't submit him, he would be able to grind out the decision. I think it would take Leon a little bit of time to get used to the wrestling transitions, the grappling transitions, to see where he could actually escape from and get off the canvas from. But I do think that Leon would end up taking those championship rounds by outpointing Islam, and I think he would be able to outpoint him as Islam would be getting tired from that aggressive sambo style, but I just think it would be too little too late, and I think that Islam would take that decision 48-47. Moving up, we have the next double champ fight. We have Leon Edwards versus Dricus du Plessis, the middleweight champion. Leon moving up in weight doesn't give him a huge disadvantage by any means. I mean, he's 6'2". He does have a slight reach disadvantage at 2 inches, but I think he has the distance control and reflexes to make up for it. Overall, I think he is the better kickboxer out of the two, definitely the cleaner kickboxer out of the two. And Leon does have an underrated takedown defense at 70%. And I mean, Dricus only secures half of the takedowns he actually shoots for statistically. Dricus is tricky though. I mean, he has an unorthodox style mixed with heavy hands, which has caused a lot of trouble for his previous opponents, especially Robert Whittaker. And since having his nose surgery, Dricus was able to go 5 rounds with no cardio issues against Sean Strickland. However, I do believe he lost the fight against Strickland, who has arguably the most composed point fighter he's ever faced. He really struggled to deal with Strickland's jab and the overall volume of Strickland, which I can see Leon employing very well. Dricus will run into similar issues against Leon when it comes to the point fighting, as Leon is as good as Strickland at point fighting, but he also utilizes his kicks very effectively as well. I mean, this has been evident through Dricus's whole UFC career, holding a strike absorption rate of almost 5 strikes per minute. Ultimately, I believe that Dricus could give himself that opportunity to finish Leon if he aggressively pushes the pace early, with the opportunity to steal a round against him. However, I think Leon is just too defensively sound on the feet. But I think just like Pantoja against Sean O'Malley, Dricus' durability will push the fight out to a unanimous decision, but it'll go in Leon's favour. Moving up, we have Dricus du Plessis versus the light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira. Dricus moving to light heavyweight would, of course, I think it would increase his strength and his overall weight in top control if he did secure the takedown. However, I think the biggest thing is that extra 20 pounds reduces his speed dramatically compared to Pereira. Pereira is a natural light heavyweight at his size. It's also noted that Dricus actually fought at welterweight earlier in his career, which Pereira would never even be close to making that. He would have to cut a bloody leg off to make that. If Dricus can shoot in for a power double without getting clipped, he definitely has a chance at securing a win, I think. Also, Alex Pereira doesn't have the cleanest ground game, as comparatively, he's obviously new to MMA. However, in the time that he has been in the octagon, he's improved dramatically. But to state the obvious, Alex Pereira's kickboxing skills completely outclass Dricus's. He's just too powerful at light heavyweight and has the striking accuracy to go along with it at 62.8%, being even higher ranked in that department than O'Malley was at 4th place over 5th for O'Malley. I think the fight would end very similar to the Yuri fight in that Pereira would just chew up Dricus's lead leg, as Dricus is very similar in that sense. He puts a lot of his weight on his lead leg to lunge forward, very similar to the way Jamal Hill does it. Pereira would catch Dricus when attempting to close the distance with a check hook and would then back him against the cage. And I think just from there, I think he would finish him just like he finished Adesanya and Jamal Hill. Also, I think with Dricus's aggressive forward pressure, he gets caught in round 2 by KO. I think if Pereira was at middleweight, the speed difference for Dricus would give him a better opportunity to secure the takedown and submit him. But at light heavyweight, I honestly just don't give him much of a chance at all. And finally, on to the last double champ fight, we have Alex Pereira versus heavyweight champ Jon Jones. This was definitely a fight I wanted to look at, with Alex calling out for a heavyweight fight after beating Jamal Hill. Which obviously, if he's calling out for a heavyweight fight, he's calling out for a heavyweight champion. I highly doubt he's going to be fighting someone lower ranked. I just don't really see why there's a point in that. He's just got so much stock in the UFC at the moment, they would give him the title fight. And that's what people would pay to see as well. To start with this though, I think there's a similar issue speed-wise to Dricus moving to light heavyweight for Pereira moving up to heavyweight. Pereira isn't the fastest fighter as it is, and almost solely relies on technique, especially through his leg kicks. I think one of the biggest issues is the time frame, as Jon Jones has conditioned his body to heavyweight over a 3-year period, while Pereira is already 36 and has only just progressed to light heavyweight, which can have all sorts of effects on his conditioning and his pace. I think that's just a major negative for Pereira's game in putting this matchup together. Although the superior striking is on the side of Alex Pereira, and Pereira definitely has the capability of knocking out Jon Jones. However, Jon Jones has a 4.5-inch reach advantage that he knows how to use extremely well, which we have seen throughout his whole entire career. Looking at his kickboxing, his boxing, his elbows, utilizing his Muay Thai. I wouldn't undermine Jon Jones' striking game in the slightest, even against Alex Pereira. And there just aren't many flaws to Jon Jones' game, in general. Especially in this matchup with Pereira primarily being one-dimensional, with us not seeing much of a ground game from him. Ultimately, I think Jones wipes Alex Pereira out on the ground, and the only way Alex wins is by catching him clean on an entry, which is a possibility, as the one potential negative that was seen from Jon Jones in the Cyril Gane fight was that he looked a little bit slow on the entry, but there just wasn't that much of the fight to actually analyze. So it's hard to really judge Jon Jones at heavyweight, even with having his first fight there. If the fight does go to the ground, which I believe is inevitable, it ends by Jon Jones shooting for a double, locking the hands, pulling his legs out from under him, and pressuring his neck and getting a round 1 guillotine choke, just giving him the Cyril Gane treatment. Speaking of Alex Pereira, though, and him flatlining Jamal Hill at UFC 300, check out my matchups to make video for who I think he is going to fight next.